There are CAFOs with, I wish I was making this up, 1,500 to 20,000 milk cows, a million laying hens, as many as almost 200,000 per building in aviary systems stacked up floor to ceiling, not going outdoors. They've just kind of betrayed our values. Some certifiers would never certify those because they're not organic. And if you read the language in the law, they don't comply. There's others that are more than happy to take the money from the big food players, which are mostly conventional businesses, and bless them with the organic seal. So we're trying to do two things: ferret out the disingenuous labeling, mislabeling of livestock products like that, and then also address fraud, because most organic farmers are very honest and voluntarily honest. When we catch the fraud, it's not the USDA catching the fraud; it's investigators like me, and that really places honest farmers at a competitive disadvantage, and obviously defrauds consumers. So we won't stand for that.
Hi, welcome to Beyond Labels. I'm Dr. Stina McCullough, here with my favorite co-host, Joel Salatin. Today, we have an action-packed show for everybody. We have with us the one and only Mark Kastel. He is the founder and executive director of Organic Eye, which is an organic industry watchdog. They have done some amazing things. If you haven't checked them out, go to their website after this podcast. We'll put the link in the description box. We're lucky to have them as our watchdogs. He's going to share with us today some of their investigations that have happened. We're going to talk about potential corruption in the organic label, how consumers may be getting duped by their label. But first, a little about Mark. He spent most of his professional life advocating for family farms and working to ensure the integrity of organics. He actually spent his early career working for agribusiness giants, but he made a paradigm shift to organic agriculture in the early 1980s after suffering a debilitating illness. His adherence to an exclusively organic diet was instrumental in restoring and maintaining his good health. He actually has started his own industry-related consultancy. He is president of M.A. Kastel and Associates. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
I'm really excited for today's show, and I think we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to jump right in. Some of our listeners may not already be aware of how organic food is actually certified. So before we jump into potential corruption, misleading labels, let's start there. Does the USDA certify organic foods? Is it independent certifiers? Or walk us through that process, please.
Back in the 1980s, when we didn't found the organic farming movement, but we certainly helped commercialize it, there was kind of this Byzantine network of independent certifiers, and none of them recognized each other's standards. It was really hard to do products where you had to combine ingredients. And in California, they had a state statute. You could nuke the ground one year with herbicides, be organic the next, and then rotate herbicides back and forth. So silly folks like me who were burning gasoline or diesel fuel to cultivate, or hiring people with a hoe, we couldn't compete with that. So we actually asked the Congress to enshrine a law, enshrine the USDA's responsibility. The saying, be careful what you ask for, you might actually get it. And so they harmonized the theory that they would harmonize the standards. So the USDA does not inspect any farms. They don't certify any farms. They basically certify the certifiers. It's an accreditation system. There are over 40 certifiers just in the US, let alone ones that are operating internationally. And they range quite a bit. So this harmonization never worked. So some of them certify corporate agribusinesses growing, quote, organic produce in sealed greenhouses, hydroponically, not in rich soil that imparts a diverse microbiome and nutritional density, but in liquid fertilizer solutions in a hydroponic greenhouse, or there are some certifiers that will certify just the opposite kind of operation that Mr. Joel Salatin runs. And so there are CAFOs with, I wish I was making this up, 1,500 to 20,000 milk cows, 1 million laying hens, as many as almost 200,000 per building in aviary systems stacked up floor to ceiling, not going outdoors. They've just kind of betrayed our values. There are other I can't remember where I left off, but some certifiers would never certify those because they're not organic. And if you read the language in the law, they don't comply. There's others that are more than happy to take the money from the big food players, which are mostly conventional businesses, and bless them with the organic seal. So we're trying to do two things: ferret out the disingenuous labeling, mislabeling of livestock products like that, and then also address fraud, because most organic farmers are very honest and voluntarily honest. When we catch the fraud, it's not the USDA catching the fraud; it's investigators like me, and that really places honest farmers at a competitive disadvantage, and obviously defrauds consumers. So we won't stand for that.
Yeah. Wait, so you're saying,
Mark, as someone who was involved in those early days, I sat on the very first certification committee in Virginia when the Virginia Association of Biological Farmers jumped into that position. And when Senator Patrick Leahy, I think I'm right on that, was the proponent of the National Organic Programs Act back at that time. I mean, that act actually uses terms like soil. The vision of that was a labeling standard that would create consistency among all these various certifying agencies, so that when I went to the store and bought organic, I would know that it came up to a certain minimum standard, regardless of whether it was California Organic, Oregon Tilth, Virginia Biological Farming, Carolina Farm Stewardship, or whatever the agency, whatever the primarily nonprofit, what they were. And as you have so eloquently explained, what started with a lot of enthusiasm and sincerity in the organic sphere, gradually has eroded through the corporatization, if you will, the corporatization of not only the fraternal revolving door between the USDA and industry, but industry within the organic movement itself. It moved out of the individual farms that envisioned it originally, and I don't think, you could correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think anybody, when Senator Patrick Leahy put the bill in, I don't think anybody at that time would have thought that an outfit like Driscoll's would 20 years later be certifying hydroponic strawberries.
No, in fact, we just flew under the radar screen in the end of the 1980s, before the Organic Foods Production Act was passed in 1990. Incidentally, the USDA actually testified against passage of the bill. They didn't want it. Why? Because of all the agribusinesses hated organics. If organic food was better, it must mean our food is bad. Let's kill it. And then somewhere during the 90s, they decided, we're not going to beat this thing. We might as well join them, because eaters were smart enough to say, we don't really want agrochemical residues and drugs and genetically engineered experiments on our children. And so they started buying up all the original brands. So today, their lobbyists are all over this thing. We'll never fly under the radar again. And so it's $60 billion. Money speaks very loudly. And in Washington, the lobbyists and the campaign contributions, whether it's in at the House Ag or the Senate Ag Committee or in the halls of the USDA, they have a voice that's generally louder than ours. But I should just say that there's still an opportunity for consumers to really connect with the local food shed where they live, where they can buy a great percentage of their food, in many cases year-round produce, creative farmers that either greenhouses or hoop houses and extend the seasons. They can certainly buy all their milk, meat, and eggs from local farmers who they'll meet and know. And in the 20 years I've been doing this organic watchdogging, I have found virtually no fraud on a local basis. And these are the people who really understand soil stewardship and its relationship to nutrient density and in turn our health. And so if you buy, it might be your local member-owned food co-op or the farmer's market on Saturday or the farm store at the farmer's home in operation, your food might have been harvested 10 hours ago rather than 10 days ago from California or Mexico. So it's flavor, nutrition, it's really unparalleled.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I love the fact that you have just pointed out that you have found very little fraud at the local level and at the individual farm level. I remember in early discussions here in Virginia regarding, certification, I was a little bit of a maverick. I wasn't too, I envisioned, I was concerned about what has actually happened at the early days. But I said, if we're going to certify something, let's go certify what the guy's reading on his by his toilet magazine rack. Because what we were actually trying to certify, we were trying to certify a thought process, an ideology, a paradigm, a worldview. And as you've described so beautifully, as the corporatism came in the 90s, when they decided to kind of let's join them and not fight them, suddenly the movement was inundated by people who were coming for financial interests, not philosophical and paradigmatic interests. And so that was a huge change in the organic movement.
Well, Joel, as long as we had, by the way, you go upstairs to the bathroom, you'll find Acres USA and some other periodicals that you'll be familiar with and you might read if you want to trade or anything. M.A. Kastel and Associates went out of business 20 years ago when I started doing the organic watchdog work. So I don't have a relationship financially with the corporate sector. But I take that knowledge, that industry knowledge and the farming knowledge, and combine that to be a good private, well, not a private eye, a public eye. But in terms of people coming for the money, I do not fault farmers for that. One of the reasons that we founded this movement was that we were just hemorrhaging farmers off the land. If Earl Butz, the USDA secretary during the Nixon administration, didn't originate the term, he coined or popularized the term, get big or get out.
Right.
And so, after a certain scale, you can't do this kind of a curation of soil and animals. And so we wanted family scale farmers to make an honest living. So I've seen many times over the years, people come for the money, but if there's the right oversight between, let's say, who they're selling to, like an Organic Valley, which is a cooperative, or there's a great one in Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, and the certifier is doing their job and the USDA is doing their job, even if their motivation is profit, they have to toe the line. But so often, Joel, I get people came in, they were career agriculturalists, multi-generational farmers, and they were going to lose their farm, and they convinced the rest of their family, I've done the research, we should be organic. And they become true believers. They see the animal health. I have dairy farmers say, geez, we used to have a vet on our farm every week. I haven't seen one for 6 months, and that was for a prolapse after birth. And so they take great pride in what they've learned, and usually it's from other farmers. It's a real peer-to-peer education. I know you've been personally hands-on involved in that.
Thank you for joining us on Beyond Labels. Our mission with this podcast is to make it accessible to everyone.
But we are behind a paywall because the issues we discuss are often subject to censorship. We've run into that, and so we have an extremely modest paywall to let us have the freedom to discuss the kind of issues we want to discuss in the way we want to discuss them. And you can become a member and enjoy all this content by clicking on the description box below. We look forward to having you join our family.